Hello.
It's John Pollock, everybody.
And it's Wai Ting.
And we are, where are we, Wai?
We are at
Mill Street Brewery.
No. We're at
what it's called?
We're at a bar. We're at a bar called Axis. And today's Ask A WAI, of course.
Brought to you by Hose.
The Hose, yes, thank you. It is summer, as you can see, in Toronto, but not really. We're just experiencing some really weird weather. What is it today?
It's like over 22 today here in Canada, which in Celsius is a ridiculous amount Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
I don't know the conversion. I'm Canadian.
But it's basically really hot. My mom tells me it's supposed to be really cold next week, too. So this is really weird. The world is coming to an end, but that doesn't mean we can't enjoy some beers and answer your questions.
Well, before we start, though, Wai, you have just come into some money.
Yes.
By way of your birthplace. This is one of the most amazing stories I've heard in some time.
Well, we do record these on John's BlackBerry playbook, of course. But I was telling John, I think I might be getting an iPad soon. And how would I be able to afford an iPad, you ask? Me, doing podcasts and editing Canadian television. How would I be able to afford a product like the new Apple iPad? Well, part of the reason why I went back to Asia for this summer, as some of you recall, was that this past year or last year, the Hong Kong government actually had a surplus in their budget. So they've decided to give every citizen of Hong Kong money. And yes, despite having lived my, 23 years in Canada, I am still a Hong Kong citizen. And so I was entitled to this money, and so I got, $700 for being born. So I'll be using
Congratulations.
that. Yeah.
This is something I've never heard of. A birthright from your country.
I've heard
money for being born.
I've heard of that.
Thank you.
No, I've heard of that before, but mainly for people who've been discriminated against. But I certainly haven't been discriminated against.
All right, are you ready to tackle some questions here on the good old baby blue phone?
Let's do it.
All right, let's start it off. Caesar Silvera starts us off with, what do you look for in questions so that you don't end up skipping them?
Interesting questions, like yours, Caesar.
Yes, I guess stuff that we can give an honest answer to, something that is not silly, or it's just so silly that we have to answer it, such as this question. So thanks.
I worry about the volume, John. You might have to start yelling. I know it feels especially awkward because we are in front of a ton of people, and we don't. They're like, what the fuck are these guys talking about?
Well, we are definitely getting looks from people, but that's part of the ambience. I just liken it to all of these people looking at us saying, hey, it sounds like the Review Away guys. It couldn't be.
Listen, getting dirty looks from people is a big part of being a wrestling fan. And, it just comes with the territory. What these guys? These are adults. They're talking about this stuff. Yeah.
No, it's fine. I'm looking forward to Miami, where we will be around our people.
That's right.
For an entire weekend.
That is right.
Alexander Rios. I don't want to ask something repetitive and stupid like why doesn't WWE update their hideous championship belt already, but this is something I myself have wondered about, not so much from a creative standpoint, but also from a production point of view. Maybe even the way the company conducts its business ventures. Exactly at what point did WWE change from the old school World Wrestling Federation to the modern day WWE? And I think he doesn't want to know the name change specifically, but the overall product change.
Yeah.
And, what would you say to that, Wai?
I mean, from reviewing all these shows that we have over the past years, I think for me, the change, if you could pinpoint a time, I suppose you could kind of pinpoint it to maybe perhaps around like WrestleMania 19, when we officially, that was when Rock and Austin ended. Yes. I guess John Cena was really still on the rise, but he was already gaining a lot of momentum in the mid card. So for me, perhaps that would be it. What about you?
I would say that's a very similar one. WrestleMania 19 is, I think, one of the more underrated WrestleManias, as we have reviewed in the past. I mean, it's not one that always gets the love that maybe a 17 does, or the 87 show, but that really was the end, to me, of the Attitude Era, for the exact reason you mentioned, with Austin and Rock kind of ending off there, and both guys moving on after that. James Contrino, what's the best concert you have ever been to? You've been to lots more than that.
Yeah, I haven't been to too many concerts as of late, but like it used to be a big passion of mine. You know, it might surprise some to hear, but like my best concert I've ever been to was a Radiohead cover band. Like in Toronto, there used to be a series of shows downtown where they did like classic albums, and like this particular evening was for OK Computer, which is like one of my favorite records. So I went to this show. And I loved it, especially because I had just seen the actual Radiohead maybe like 2 months prior in the Sky Dome, which is a stadium, which is like WrestleMania 18. So imagine seeing like seeing a band in like such a huge place. The sound was shit, and like the band, like Radiohead, they're very reluctant to play a lot of their hits, at least throughout the entire set. So going to a show, even though it was a cover band, I had just so much fun hearing these people play my favorite songs. So like honestly, one of my favorite shows. But you know, a lot of shows that I've really enjoyed, like Death from Above. I used to go to a lot of their shows. Yeah,
I would say the best concert I have gone to was a few years ago. I went to see a Green Day show, and I didn't have the highest of expectations because, I mean, this was Green Day at a big outdoor park, but they were fantastic. And the biggest letdown on the show was that Jimmy Eat World was opening for them, and I am a huge fan of Jimmy Eat World. And they, let's put it in wrestling terms, they were not the headliner, and they kind of put on their "I'm doing a job" face, and they came out and they did their 30 minutes. And it was like pulling teeth here. And I was very, very disappointed because years later I saw them where they were the headline act, and it was just black and white in comparison. They put on a fantastic show when they were headlining, but that tour with Green Day, it was, hey, we're better than this. It was like, really, it's like CM Punk upset at The Rock headlining. That would be the comparison.
right.
What's the worst concert you've been to? Mine is hands down Katy Perry.
Really?
Which I paid money to see.
Yeah.
She was terrible.
Why was it so bad?
She was terrible live. She is not a live performer.
Okay. I honestly don't think too much about like worst stubs unless they're like really bad. But sorry, I'll answer that at a different time. Let's go to a different question.
Dennis Amaya, what were the first impressions when you met each other?
Well, we didn't actually meet each other until we started talking about wrestling and the law. And like some of you know the story about how I met John. We were in the same school, and we've been in the same class for the same, you know, for like an entire year without really having spoken to each other or realizing, why do we need to give each other any type of attention? So we were sitting in a large class one day in our lecture hall, and as far as I knew, I didn't know anybody else in RTA who was my program who was a wrestling fan. But then all of a sudden I hear this guy start talking about the law. Like, the law. And when I hear somebody talk about the law, which is almost never, you don't just realize that this person is a wrestling fan, but that this person is like a major wrestling fan. And so I was like, hey, are you talking about the law? And then this guy says, yeah, I'm John Pollock. I work on the show.
What a loser.
And I was like, holy shit, this is the John Pollock. Because, of course, like listening to the show, you'd always hear about the guy's name. So, a major celebrity. Celebrity.
Just to further kind of Wai's involvement with the law, this is legitimately how this happened, okay? Was that we were on 640 at the time, and Jay was being moved over to the co-host spot, and I was going to become the board op. And at this time, we needed a new call screener, and literally we went to the then head of programming of the Fight Network, Brian Sobey, and he said, okay, well, let's get one of the interns. And he literally walked out into the main area. He saw one guy named Maury, Stash, and Wai. And he looked at the three, and he pointed, Wai, can you call screen the law? That's literally how it happened.
Yeah, I know. But he knew that I was a wrestling fan. He probably knew that.
Maury was a huge wrestling fan.
I suppose.
I think Maury would have said yes too had he been pointed to. But that one point led to this whole indoctrination.
Brian knew that I listened to the law beforehand too. So,
well, you just took out a lot of the drama then of this story.
It's not that much of a story. That's all.
Let's continue onwards with Steve Kassan. Do you sometimes regret putting out all this content? Do not get me wrong, I'm sure we all appreciate it, but there must be times where you must have dreaded recording a podcast or viewing a pay-per-view.
There are definitely times where maybe it's a Sunday evening and I still haven't watched the show yet. Like I'm talking like maybe like an old WCW show that nobody ever wants to watch that I still have to watch before I get up to work in the morning on Monday. Those are times where like I regret watching the show, but I never regret having to record the podcast because that's always just a lot of fun.
I'm completely the same. Sometimes the shows are, you have to sit through this long pay-per-view, such as we have to for WrestleMania 20, which we are going to be reviewing next week. But the podcast part, I enjoy all of the shows we do. They're a lot of fun. Let's do one more before we wrap up. John Prince says, do you think that the Johnny Teddy feud for control of both shows is indicative of a bigger unification strategy for the WWE? And do you think the performers will move freely between both shows and there will be one major champion?
Yes. I think what you saw this whole year the split really meant nothing this entire year, ever since they started doing the Super Show. I think that's just going to continue. I think they're going to want all their main guys on Raw to push the pay-per-views and all that. And I think, the Laurinaitis stuff being on both shows is to help unity between both brands. I really feel like the brands have no reason to exist other than house shows right now.
We've got an entertaining draft coming up next month.
Yeah, how's the pool coming?
Not keeping track, everyone. Well, that's going to wrap us up. We have tons of stuff right now on the website. If you are a wrestling fan, and primarily a Law fan, folks, there's so much stuff up there right now. We have done, I counted this way, in the last 7 days, we have put up 8 different shows. Between the Law, our interviews with Vader, Brian Mann, Lance Storm, Review of Raw, Review A WAI, WH Park joining us all the way from Japan. Could you want any more, everybody? So
they could, and they will get it next week.
We have tons of stuff coming up next week as we go into WrestleMania and WrestleMania weekend, where me and Wai will be down in Miami. In the meantime, you can go to liveaudiowrestling.com. All of the shows are at fightnetwork.com/podcasts, and you can also subscribe to Live Audio Wrestling on iTunes. You can get the Stitcher app, which is
they can't see it.
I'm going to show them here. See, I'm listening to the MMA Hour right now on my Stitcher app.
Cool.
It's free. Just go check that out. Follow Wai at Wai0937 and me at John Hololock. And you can get tons of our tweets talking about wrestling. And we will chat with you next week.